Single mother on a blind date said, "I'm not the girl you should meet," but the CEO fell in love for a forbidden reason. A story of overcoming and true love that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and comment where you're watching from. The March rain fell fine and persistent over Brooklyn, turning the cobblestone sidewalks into dark mirrors, reflecting the yellowed lights of the street lamps. Emily ran down Harmony Street with her bag bouncing against her hip, her dark brown hair sticking to her forehead, dripping cold water that ran down her neck. Her once white sneakers, now far from white, splashed in the puddles as she dodged couples strolling calmly under colourful umbrellas. 20 minutes late. 20 damn minutes. She could feel her phone vibrating insistently inside her bag, probably Sarah, her best friend, demanding updates on how the blind date she should never have accepted was going. But there was no time to respond to messages, hardly any time to breathe. The Italian restaurant La Dolce Vita appeared at the corner like a refuge of golden light and fogged windows from the warm interior. Emily stopped at the door, trying to catch her breath, and ran her hands through her hair in a futile attempt to tidy up. That's when she noticed. The right sleeve of her beige blouse was stained with lime green paint, a reminder of the art class that afternoon with her third-grade students. "Perfect," she murmured to herself with a humorless laugh. "Simply perfect." She pushed the glass door open and was greeted by a wave of cozy warmth and the unmistakable aroma of sautéed garlic, fresh tomatoes, and basil. The restaurant was small, with exposed brick walls adorned with black and white photographs of Italy. Dark wooden tables filled the space snugly yet charmingly, and a low murmur of conversations punctuated the atmosphere, along with soft Italian music playing in the background. A young waiter, in a spotless black apron, approached with a professional smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes, under—" Emily hesitated, realizing she didn't know whose name the reservation was under. "Probably under Sarah? Or maybe—" "Are you looking for Mr. Michael Anderson's table?" the waiter gently interrupted, pointing to the back of the restaurant. The name meant nothing to her. Sarah had been extremely vague about the so-called perfect guy she wanted to introduce. "An amazing guy, Em. Seriously, hard-working, handsome. You two will hit it off. Trust me." Emily had only agreed because Sarah had been insisting for months, and because the loneliness of the nights after putting Helena to bed was starting to weigh too heavily. "Yeah, that must be him," she replied, following the waiter between the tables. As she moved through the dining area, Emily could feel her heart racing. Not from romantic excitement, but from that uncomfortable nervousness of someone about to do something embarrassing. Blind dates always seemed like a bad idea in retrospect. She could already imagine the forced conversation, the awkward silences, the polite lie at the end. "It was great to meet you. We'll talk." Then she saw him. Sitting at a corner table under a copper lamp casting soft shadows over his broad shoulders was a man in his mid-30s. He wore a navy blue dress shirt, no tie, with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing tanned forearms. His dark hair was impeccably slicked back, and he had that kind of upright posture that betrayed years of refined education. At that moment, he was leaning over some documents spread out on the table, a silver pen between his fingers, discreetly framed glasses resting on the tip of his straight nose. Emily stopped mid-stride, her legs suddenly weak. It couldn't be. It simply couldn't be. That face, the strong jawline, the thick eyebrows, the angular cut of his cheekbones. She had seen that face that very morning. In the waiting room of the pediatrician's office, while Helena played with the worn-out toys in the clinic, Emily had absent-mindedly flipped through a Forbes magazine. The cover story, "The New Titans of Digital Education, Michael Anderson and the EduTech Revolution in America," Michael Anderson, CEO of EduTech Innovations, a company valued in the millions, an honors graduate from Harvard, son of one of the most traditional families in New York. The man who was revolutionizing educational technology in the country, bringing apps and digital platforms to public and private schools. And she was a municipal art teacher, living in a rented 40-square-meter apartment in Queens, with a 6-year-old daughter, credit card debt, and a bag full of overdue bills. Before she could backtrack, before logic could take hold, the words spilled from her mouth, like an urgent confession, laden with all the anxiety that had accumulated in her chest. "I'm not the girl you should meet." Michael looked up from the documents. The movement was slow, deliberate, and when his eyes met hers, light brown, almost golden under that light, Emily saw something she didn't expect. It wasn't discomfort or confusion. It was genuine interest. For the first time in a long time, she saw a man looking at her as if he really wanted to see who was behind the apparent mess. He closed the documents with a smooth motion, took off his glasses, and placed them on the table. Then, for the first time in years, at least that's what it would seem to anyone who knew him well, Michael Anderson smiled for real. It wasn't a social or polished smile. It was a smile that reached his eyes, creating tiny wrinkles at the corners, a smile that seemed surprised by his own existence. "Good evening," he said, his deep, calm voice carrying a warmth that enveloped her. Emily had a soft New York accent. "I guess you already know who I am. That puts me at a disadvantage." Emily stood still, drenched, with ink on her sleeve, aware of every imperfection she carried. "Emily," she finally managed to say, "my name is Emily Ferreira, and I'm serious. You shouldn't be here with me." Michael rose from his chair with a fluid motion and gestured to the seat across from him. The golden light from the copper lamp danced over the dark wooden table, where a glass of red wine awaited him, untouched. "Why don't you sit down and let me decide that for myself?" he suggested, and there was something in the calmness of his voice that made Emily move before she could think better of it. She pulled out the chair and sat down, placing her large bag on the floor beside her, a patterned fabric bag, faded from use, from which the tip of a sketchbook and what looked like a crumpled school note were escaping. The contrast between them was almost comical. He, impeccable and organized, with his documents perfectly aligned. She, a wet and stained mess that left a small puddle forming on the floor around her feet. The waiter appeared like a discreet ghost, placing a menu in front of Emily and filling a glass of water with lemon. "Would you like a drink to start?" Emily glanced at Michael's glass of wine, then back at her own water. "You know what? Bring me a wine too, just in case I need it." Michael smiled again, that smile that seemed so out of place on his serious face. "Tough day?" "You have no idea," Emily sighed, running her hands through her wet hair and realizing too late that she was probably making the situation worse. "Look, before we start any polite conversation about the weather or hobbies or whatever normal people talk about on dates, I need to be honest with you. Honesty, what an interesting concept for a first impression," he commented, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms in a way that could seem defensive, but his eyes contradicted that. He was genuinely curious. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the scent of fresh basil from the kitchen mix with the woody aroma of the wine the waiter had just poured into her glass. "I have a daughter, Helena, 6 years old. She is my whole life." The words came out quickly, stumbling over each other. "I'm a single mother. I work as an art teacher at a public school in Brooklyn. I live in a rented apartment that barely fits us two. And right now, somewhere in my bag, there are at least 3 overdue bills that I'm going to have to negotiate next week." She paused, waiting to see the change in his face, that subtle hardening, that polite retreat that men always made when they found out about Helena. But Michael just watched her, his fingers gently tapping the edge of the wineglass. "Sarah showed me your photo in Forbes this morning," Emily continued, deciding to go all the way. "Well, actually, it was by accident. I was in the pediatrician's waiting room with Helena, and there you were, on the cover. CEO of EduTech Innovations, valuation of who knows how many millions, transforming education in America. And I thought, what a strange coincidence that Sarah would want to introduce me to someone today." "Sarah has a peculiar sense of timing," Michael commented dryly, but there was humor in his voice. "The point is," Emily leaned forward, the intensity in her dark eyes contrasting with the almost desperate tone of her voice, "you are a billionaire CEO, or almost that. I'm a teacher who had to miss work last month because I didn't have money for the bus to school. Our worlds don't even touch. They exist on different planets." The silence that followed was filled only by the distant murmur of other conversations and the discreet clinking of cutlery against plates. Emily could feel her heart racing, part of her wanting to get up and run away, another part trapped by those golden eyes studying her with an attention that left her feeling exposed in a way that had nothing to do with clothing. Finally, Michael spoke, and his voice had lost any trace of lightness. "Do you know what I was doing when you arrived?" Emily blinked, disarmed by the change of subject. "Working, I imagine." "Signing papers that officially moved me from New York," he said, pointing to the documents on the table. "Or rather, that make it official that I won't be going back to Los Angeles, even though my whole family has been pressuring me for 6 months to take over my father's company." He picked up the glass of wine, swirling the dark red liquid before taking a long sip. "You saw a magazine article and assumed you know my life. Let me tell you what the magazine didn't say. My father built a real estate empire through practices that border on illegality. My mother organizes charity dinners where people donate millions to causes that never see a cent, all to maintain appearances. My older brother is drowning in gambling debts that the family discreetly pays off to avoid scandal." The bitterness in his voice was palpable, turning the words into something sharp. "I came to New York 3 years ago because I couldn't stand that world of hypocrisy and appearances anymore. I built EduTech Innovations with 2 partners I met in college, working 18 hours a day, sleeping in the office, eating instant noodles because every penny went into developing the apps." He leaned forward, closing the space between them. "So don't come to me saying our worlds don't intersect. They play. You don't know my world. You know the edited version that the magazine sold." Emily felt the blush rise up her neck. She had presumed, she had judged, she had done exactly what she hated being done to her. "You're right," she admitted, softly. "I'm sorry, I'm just used to being dismissed when people find out about my life. I thought I was making things easier." "Easier for whom?" Michael asked, and there was no accusation in his question, just genuine curiosity. "For you, for me, for—" Emily picked up her glass of wine and took a generous sip, feeling the warm liquid slide down her throat. "Look, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do the social dance, the empty conversations, pretending to be someone I'm not. My life is a mess. I'm a mess, Lily, is the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to me, but she's also exhausting. I wake up at 5 in the morning to pack lunches, grade papers until midnight, deal with parents who think art isn't an important subject, and at the end of the month, I juggle the bills because a teacher's salary doesn't even cover the basics." She took a deep breath, the words flowing now like water from a broken dam. "And you know what the worst part is? I love my life. I love waking up and seeing Lily sleeping with her hair all messy. I love when my students show me a drawing they made and they're proud. I love the smell of paint and paper, but I'm also tired. Tired of doing everything alone, of being strong all the time, of not having anyone to share decisions or worries with or just just to be there. Tears unexpectedly welled up in her eyes, and she quickly wiped them away with the back of her hand, irritated with herself. "I'm sorry. This isn't exactly first date conversation." Michael was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made Emily want to look away, but at the same time held her in place. "Sarah told me about you," he finally said. "Not about the overdue bills or the practical details, but she told me you were the most honest person she knew, that you never pretended to be someone you weren't, even when it cost you dearly, that you had a fierce loyalty to the people you loved." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Do you know how many honest people I know, Emily? Truly honest, not just politely sincere. I can count them on one hand, and in them had the courage to come to a first date and tell me right away that I shouldn't be there. Maybe because none of them were crazy enough," Emily tried to joke, but her voice came out shaky. "Or maybe because none of them were brave enough," he gently corrected. The waiter returned, interrupting the moment with impeccable timing. "Would you like to place your order?" Emily looked at the menu for the first time, her eyes scanning the options in Italian, the prices making her stomach churn. A basic pasta dish cost what she spent on groceries for a week. "What do you recommend?" she asked the waiter, giving up on trying to decipher it. "The porcini mushroom risotto is exceptional today, ma'am. And for an appetizer, perhaps a carpaccio." Emily looked at Michael, who was watching the interaction with curious interest. "I actually love simple pasta with homemade tomato sauce, you know? The basic kind," she said, and there was a challenge in her voice. She wasn't going to pretend to be sophisticated when she wasn't. Michael smiled, that genuine smile that completely transformed his serious face. "Bring 2 spaghetti al pomodoro," he ordered the waiter. "The simplest the kitchen knows how to make, and garlic bread, please." When the waiter walked away, Emily couldn't help but let out a small laugh. "You just ordered the cheapest dish on the menu at an expensive Italian restaurant." "No," Michael corrected, picking up his glass of wine. "I just ordered the same dish you wanted, but I was afraid to ask for it." And at that moment, sitting in an uncomfortable chair, with wet clothes clinging to her back and dried paint on her sleeve, Emily Anderson felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, the fragile and scary possibility that maybe, just maybe, someone could see her for who she truly was and still choose to stay. The 2 months that followed that rainy night in Brooklyn transformed Emily's routine in ways she never thought possible. Not in the grand and cinematic way that romantic movies suggested, but in small, seismic adjustments that shook the carefully constructed structure of her solitary life. Michael didn't try to impress her with expensive restaurants or extravagant gifts. Instead, he showed up during her class breaks, always punctual at 10:15 in the morning, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the corner. Café, not one of those fancy coffee shops, but from Mr. Mario, who knew Emily by name and always added extra sugar because he knew she liked it that way. The first time he showed up, Emily was sitting in the small courtyard of the public school, surrounded by peeling walls painted in faded aqua green and the distant sound of children shouting at recess. She had just confiscated a 5th grader's phone for the 3rd time that week and was mentally calculating if she could pay the electricity bill and still have money for Lily's birthday at the end of the month. "I thought you might need this," Michael said, appearing like an unexpected apparition in that cracked concrete setting with rusty toys, extending the steaming cup of coffee. Emily looked at him, then at the coffee, then at the perfectly tailored grey suit he was wearing, completely out of place, amidst the graffiti-covered school desks and the scent of school snacks that filled the air. "How did you find out where I work?" "Sarah," he simply replied, sitting next to her on the paint-stained wooden bench. "She also told me that you have a 15-minute break at 10 o'clock. I hope I'm not being intrusive." Emily picked up the coffee, her fingers briefly brushing against his, and the warmth of the liquid spread through her cold hands. "Intrusive would be if I wasn't secretly hoping you would do something like this," she admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. He smiled, and they sat there in comfortable silence, drinking bad coffee while watching the students run around the playground. A skinny boy of about 8 ran past, shouting something about finding a beetle, followed by a horde of equally enthusiastic classmates. "They're lucky to have you," Michael commented, observing the scene. "Why?" "Because I let them paint the walls sometimes. Because you're here, because you choose to be here, in this school that clearly lacks resources, teaching kids that so many people have given up on." He turned to look at her, and there was something in his eyes that made Emily feel seen in a way that left her vulnerable. EduTech Innovations has been trying to get into public schools for 2 years. Do you know why it's difficult? Emily shook her head. Because teachers like you, who really care, are suspicious of tech companies that show up promising magic solutions. And you're right to be suspicious. He took a sip of the coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. But it's not about replacing you. It's about providing tools that make the work you already do so well easier. "Are you giving me a sales pitch on my break?" Emily asked, but she was smiling. "I'm sharing my passion with someone who has the same passion, just applied differently," he corrected. "Education. In the end, that's what it's about for both of us, isn't it?" And it was. Emily realized that it was exactly about that. That became their ritual. Michael would show up at 10:15 with coffee and sometimes some pastries from the bakery, chicken croquettes, meat pies, warm cheese bread. They would talk about everything and nothing, about her students and his challenges at work, about his childhood in Los Angeles that he wanted to forget, and her childhood in a suburb in New Jersey that she cherished with a mix of nostalgia and pain. "My mum raised me alone too," Michael shared on a sunny April morning, as spring began to paint New York in softer tones. "My dad was technically present but emotionally absent. He built buildings, but he never built a relationship with me." "Is that why you distanced yourself from him?" Emily asked carefully. "That's why I needed to step away, to figure out who I was without the surname Anderson defining every aspect of my existence." He looked at his own hands as if searching for something in them. "But it's complicated. Family is always complicated." Emily understood complicated. She lived complicated. The weekends were more challenging. Lily occupied every second of Emily's time, which was exactly how it should be. She didn't regret it for a moment. But it meant that meetings with Michael had to be stolen, squeezed in between parks and children's commitments. The first time he invited her to lunch on a Saturday, Emily had to be honest. "I have no one to leave Lily with. Mrs. Johnson, my neighbor, traveled to visit her daughter in Vermont." There was a pause on the line, and Emily braced herself for the inevitable retreat. "Then bring her along," Michael said simply. "Central Park has that huge playground. We can bring sandwiches." "You want to spend Saturday in a park eating sandwiches with a 6-year-old who doesn't stop talking even when she's asleep?" "I want to spend Saturday with you. Lily is part of the package, a very good package from what you tell me." Emily felt something tighten in her chest. Fear and hope mixed in equal proportions. The following Saturday was revealing in ways Emily didn't expect. Lily, with her light brown hair tied in 2 crooked braids that Emily had hurriedly made, looked at Michael with the natural suspicion of a child who learned early that adults could disappear without warning. "Are you the coffee uncle that Mommy keeps talking about?" was the first thing Lily asked, her small hands clutching the worn stuffed elephant that accompanied her everywhere. Michael knelt down to be at her level, a gesture that Emily noticed and mentally filed away as significant. "That's me, and you must be Lily, who draws better than any adult I know." "Did Mommy show you my drawings?" Lily's eyes widened. "She did. especially that one of the castle with pink dragons. That was my favorite. Lily's suspicion didn't completely disappear, but it softened at the edges. She took Emily's hand with one of hers and kept the other tightly around the elephant as they walked through the park. Central Park was crowded on that sunny April Saturday. Families spread out on the lawns, children ran between the trees, and vendors offered popsicles and coconut water. The sky was a clear, bright blue without a single cloud, and there was something in the atmosphere, perhaps the smell of freshly cut grass or the distant sound of violins being played, that made everything seem possible. They settled under a leafy tree, and Michael opened the bag he had brought. They weren't fancy bistro sandwiches. They were bologna sandwiches on white bread, a baguette wrapped in aluminum foil with homemade mayonnaise. "Did you make this?" Emily asked, incredulous. "Don't be so impressed. A bologna sandwich isn't exactly haute cuisine," he replied, but he was blushing slightly. "It's perfect," she said, meaning much more than just about the sandwich. Lily ate in silence for about 3.5 minutes, a record for her, before starting the interrogation. "Do you have kids?" "No, I don't." "Why not?" "Lily," Emily reprimanded. "It's okay," Michael gently interrupted. "I don't have kids because I haven't met someone I wanted to start a family with. Until now." He looked at Emily when he said this, and she felt a flush rise up her neck. "Do you like my mom?" Lily continued, relentless. "Lily, that's enough." Emily tried again. "I like her a lot," Michael replied, his eyes still fixed on Emily. "Your mom is the bravest person I know." "She really is," Lily agreed with the seriousness of a very small child who has witnessed a lot. "She cries sometimes at night when she thinks I'm asleep, but in the morning she always makes heart-shaped pancakes." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. She didn't know that Lily listened, didn't know her daughter carried that awareness. "Lily, why don't you go play at the playground over there?" Emily suggested, pointing to the wooden structure a few meters away. "I can see you from here." Lily looked between her mom and Michael with the unsettling sagacity of children who grow up too fast. "You won't leave while I'm playing, right?" she asked Michael. "I won't," he promised solemnly. "Promise?" "I promise." Satisfied, Lily ran to the playground, the stuffed elephant swinging in her hand. Michael and Emily sat in silence for a moment, watching Lily climb the structure with the fierce determination she applied to everything in life. "Sorry about her," Emily finally said. "She's protective." "She should be. You are the most important thing in her life." Michael turned to face her completely. "Emily, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." The serious tone of his voice made Emily's stomach tighten. "What? Are you giving me a real chance, or are you just being polite because Sarah insisted? Because I need to know. I don't play games, especially not when there's a child involved who could get hurt." Emily looked at Lily in the playground, then at the man beside her. This impossible man who appeared in her life like a casting mistake, bringing bad coffee and bologna sandwiches, treating her daughter with respect instead of tolerance. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Terrified that this is too good to be true. Terrified that you'll realize my life is too messy. Terrified that Lily will get attached to you and then you'll leave like her father did." "Her father? Did he come back? Is he in your lives?" "No. He disappeared when she was 2. He just left. One day he was there, complaining that being a dad was too hard, that he was too young for this, and the next day he had blocked my number and moved away." Emily quickly wiped away a tear that escaped. "Lily still asks about him sometimes. Not often, but she does. And every time she asks, I feel like I've failed her." "You haven't failed," Michael said with a vehemence that surprised her. "Her father failed. You stayed. You fought. That's not failure, Emily. That's heroism." I don't feel like a hero. I feel tired. Both things can be true at the same time. They sat there, shoulders lightly touching, sharing bologna sandwiches while pigeons approached hopefully in search of crumbs. Lily shouted from the playground, waving enthusiastically, and they both waved back. "I want to give you a real chance," Emily finally said, "but I need you to understand, Lily comes first, always. If at any point you realize this isn't what you want, you need to tell me immediately. I can't let her get attached and then—" "I understand," Michael gently interrupted, "and I promise, if anything changes, you will be the first to know." But Emily, it's not going to change. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to. The rest of the afternoon passed in a soft haze of easy conversation and comfortable silences. Michael pushed Lily on the swing, her peals of joy echoing through the park. He listened patiently as she explained in excessive detail the difference between each of her unicorn drawings. He didn't pretend to be interested. He was genuinely interested, asking questions that showed he was really listening. When the sun began to set, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, Lily finally succumbed to exhaustion, falling asleep in Emily's lap with the stuffed elephant pressed against her chest. "Does she always crash like this?" Michael asked quietly, watching the child sleep. "She goes 1,000 miles an hour until she just drops." Emily ran her hand through her daughter's hair with infinite tenderness. "It's like she's afraid to miss something if she rests. Reminds me of someone I know." Emily smiled tiredly. "I need to take her home. It's a pain to wake her now, but if I don't wake her, she won't sleep at night." "Let me call an Uber for you." "Michael, I know you can," he gently interrupted, "but you don't have to. Let me do this." And there, with her daughter sleeping in her lap and— As the sky changed colors above their heads, Emily Johnson began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could let someone help without it meaning failure. May arrived in New York, bringing that characteristic damp chill that penetrated the bones and made the entire city slow down a few degrees. The school fair at the municipal school where Emily worked was scheduled for the last Saturday of the month, and the preparations had consumed every free moment of the last 3 weeks. The schoolyard had been transformed. Colorful banners, cut and painted by the students in art class, spanned the space from end to end, swaying gently in the wind. Makeshift stalls made of plywood occupied every available corner, a fishing game with crepe paper fish, a ring toss made with plastic bottles, and a decorated mail booth with excessive glitter. The smell of corn pudding, sweet corn pudding, and caramel popcorn hung in the air, mixed with the sound of an accordion that Mr. Smith, the janitor, played with surprising skill. Emily was in the midst of the organized chaos, wearing a red plaid skirt that had belonged to her mother and a white blouse with frills that Lily had insisted she wear. Her cheeks were painted with fake freckles drawn with eyeliner, and she had reluctantly agreed to wear 2 braids that made her feel ridiculous. "Mom, you look beautiful," Lily had insisted that morning, twirling in her own blue and yellow fair dress. "You look like a country princess." Emily wasn't sure if that was a compliment or not, but Lily's radiant smile had been enough to make her agree. Now, at 7 in the evening, the fair was in full swing. Parents and students filled the yard, forming lines at the stalls, laughing at the square dance performances that the classes had rehearsed for weeks. Lily was somewhere with her friends, probably eating more sweets than she should, but Emily had given up trying to control everything. Sometimes a mother needed to choose her battles. "Miss Emily," Principal Johnson's voice cut through the noise, "we need more cups at the spiced cider stall." Principal Johnson was a woman in her 50s, with hair always pulled back in a tight bun and an expression that suggested perpetual disapproval. She ran the school with an iron fist, and Emily knew she had never fully approved of the presence of a young single mother on the faculty. The veiled comments over the years had made that clear. "I'll get them, Principal," Emily replied, making her way through groups of children running around the yard. That's when she saw him. Michael was standing near the entrance of the school, completely out of place in his dark jeans and light blue button-up shirt, sleeves rolled up to the elbows. He looked around like someone who had just landed on another planet, which, considering the difference between his corporate world and that festive chaos, wasn't far from the truth. Emily's heart skipped involuntarily. She hadn't said he could come. She had mentioned the fair, yes, but casually, assuming he would have. More important things to do on a Saturday night than attend a school fair. But there he was, looking for her in the crowd. When their eyes finally met, his face lit up with that smile Emily was beginning to know well, the smile reserved just for her, which made the corners of his eyes crinkle in a way she found disarming. Emily approached, suddenly aware of how ridiculous she must look with those braids and fake freckles. "You came," was all she managed to say. "You talked about this fair for 3 weeks straight," Michael replied, hands in his pockets. "Did you really think I would miss it?" I don't know. I thought you'd be busy." "I cancelled a dinner with investors to be here," he said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Was it worth it?" Before Emily could respond, Lily appeared like a whirlwind of energy, eyes wide at the sight of Michael. "Michael, you came!" she shouted, and to Emily's absolute shock, she threw herself into his arms. Michael caught her without hesitation, spinning her in the air as she laughed. "Of course I came. You invited me, remember?" Emily blinked, surprised. "Wait, you invited him?" Lily had the decency to look slightly guilty. "I got his number when you went to the bathroom at the park last week," she admitted. "And I texted him saying he had to come to the fair because you would look pretty in your fair outfit." "Lily Johnson!" Emily exclaimed, mortified. "She's not wrong," Michael commented, looking at Emily with an intensity that made her face heat up. "You look beautiful." "I look ridiculous." "You look beautiful," he repeated more firmly this time. "I'm going," Lily suddenly shouted, squirming to get out of Michael's arms. "Sophia is waving at me. Bye." And just like she appeared, she disappeared into the crowd, leaving Emily and Michael alone in the midst of the chaos. An odd silence settled between them, filled with unspoken things and a tension that had little to do with the fair around them. "Want some spiced cider?" Emily finally asked. "It's terrible, but it's tradition." "I would love some terrible spiced cider." They walked to the stall where Mrs. Adams, the cafeteria worker, was serving the hot spiced liquid in disposable cups. She winked exaggeratedly at Emily upon seeing Michael. "Is this your boyfriend, Miss Emily? What a handsome man." "Mrs. Adams," Emily protested, but she was smiling. "What's wrong? I'm old, but I'm not blind," the woman replied, handing them 2 cups. "Enjoy the party, dear. You deserve it." They stepped away, taking careful sips of the spiced cider that was, in fact, terrible. Too strong, too sweet, and with an aftertaste of cheap liquor that burned the throat. "This is poison," Michael commented, but continued drinking. "I warned you." The accordion started playing a livelier tune, and couples began to form in the center of the yard to dance. Emily watched, tapping her foot to the rhythm unconsciously when she felt Michael's hand reach out toward her. "Will you dance with me?" She looked at his hand, then at his face, then at the people around who were definitely paying attention. "I don't know how to dance. Neither do I. Let's figure it out together." There was something in the way he said it, so simple, so sincere, that made all of Emily's objections evaporate. She placed her hand in his, and he pulled her into the makeshift dance floor. What followed was awkward and imperfect. Michael stepped on her foot twice. She bumped into him trying to keep up with the rhythm, and they both laughed when they almost tripped over each other. But there was something magical in the imperfection, in the way he held her, not possessively but carefully, in the way his eyes never left hers. The music shifted to something slower, and the couples around them moved closer. Michael pulled Emily nearer, and she could feel his warmth through the thin shirt, could hear the beating of his heart racing in sync with hers. "Emily," he murmured so softly that she almost didn't hear over the music. "Yes? I'm going to kiss you now. If you don't want me to, stop me." She didn't stop him. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if they were both testing unknown ground. His lips were warm and tasted of spiced cider and something sweeter, more him. Emily felt his hands rise, one resting on his chest, the other wrapping around the back of his neck, pulling him closer. The world around them disappeared, the music, the voices, the colourful decorations swaying in the wind. There was only this moment, this man, this kiss that promised everything and nothing at the same time. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Michael rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed. "I've been waiting to do this for weeks." "Me too," Emily admitted, her voice hoarse. It was then that she heard the sharp voice of Principal Johnson, laden with barely concealed disapproval. "Miss Emily, a moment, please." Emily reluctantly stepped away from Michael, feeling the heavy gaze of the principal upon her. Principal Johnson stood near the dessert booth, arms crossed over her chest, her mouth pursed into a thin line of disapproval. "Yes, Principal?" Emily asked, approaching. "I need to remind you that you are at a school event representing this institution." Principal Johnson's voice was low, but as hard as steel. "Public displays of affection, and with a stranger no less, is not exactly the example we want to set for our students." Emily felt her blood rush to her face, but not from shame, from anger. "With all due respect, Principal, I'm on my own time, and he is not a stranger, he's— What is he exactly?" Principal Johnson interrupted, raising a perfectly arched eyebrow. "Your boyfriend? How convenient, considering that last week you were complaining about not having money for art supplies. And now you show up with a well-dressed man who, judging by his attire, can give you everything you need." The words were like a slap, calculated to hurt, and they worked. "Principal, that is completely out of line," Emily managed to say, her voice trembling with contained fury. "What's out of line is a teacher behaving like— Well, I won't say what I'm thinking, but I suggest you think about the message you're sending." Principal Johnson gave one last disdainful look before turning and walking toward a group of parents. Emily stood there, her hands shaking with rage and humiliation. She knew what Principal Johnson was insinuating. She had heard similar whispers before over the years. Single mother, too young, probably irresponsible. As if being a single mother automatically made her inadequate, morally questionable. "Hey!" Michael's soft voice came from behind her, his hands gently resting on her shoulders. "What happened?" Emily turned to him, trying to control the tears that threatened to fall. "Nothing. Just nothing. It was nothing. You're shaking. The principal thinks I'm a terrible influence on the students because I kissed you in public." The words came out in a bitter torrent. She practically called me gold-digging. Michael's jaw tightened, and Emily saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. "Where is she?" "Michael, no." Emily held his arm. "It's not worth it. She's always been like this with me. Since the day she found out about Lily, she treats me like I'm a living example of bad decision-making. That's—" He stopped, clearly trying to choose words that weren't too offensive. "That's absurd and probably illegal. Welcome to the reality of being a single mother in a conservative school," Emily said, suddenly exhausted. "People judge. They always judge." Michael pulled her into a hug, and Emily allowed herself to sink into that comfort for a moment, her face hidden in his chest, breathing in the scent of soap and something vaguely woody that she was beginning to associate with safety. "I won't let Anyone talk about you like that? He murmured against the top of her head. You can't protect me from everything, Emily replied, her muffled voice against his shirt. I can try. They stayed like that for a long moment, swaying gently even without music, until Lily's voice interrupted them. Why are you two so serious? The girl asked, appearing beside them with a chocolate-covered face. It's a party. You should be happy. Emily stepped away from Michael, discreetly wiping her eyes, and knelt down to Lily's height. You're right, my love. It's a party. Let's enjoy it. Can I have another truffle? Lily asked hopefully. Just one more, Emily agreed. And then we have to go home. It's getting late. But I want to stay longer, Lily protested. But she was already running back to the candy booth. When Emily stood up, Michael was looking at her with an expression she couldn't fully decipher. Concern, admiration, something deeper that she wasn't ready to name. What's wrong? She asked. You're incredibly strong, you know. I don't feel strong. Most of the time I feel tired. Both can coexist, he said, echoing the words he had said in the Park weeks ago. The party continued around them, but something had changed. It was no longer just attraction or casual interest. It was something more solid, more frightening. It was the possibility that this could become real, and with reality came all the complications that Emily had spent years trying to avoid. Later, when the party was winding down and the booths were being taken down, Michael insisted on taking them home. Lily fell asleep in the back seat of his car, a discreet grey sedan, not the kind of flashy car Emily half expected a CEO to drive, clutching her stuffed elephant. The drive to their small apartment in Queens was quiet, punctuated only by the sound of nighttime traffic in New York, and Lily's soft breathing as she slept. Emily gazed out the window, watching the city pass by, the streetlights reflecting in the puddles from the last rain, the bars still full of people, the shops closed with iron gates pulled down. What are you thinking about? Michael asked softly. About how complicated all of this is, she admitted. About how much easier it would be if you were just normal, a teacher, an accountant, I don't know, someone from my world. But I'm not, and you're not from my world either, he said, keeping his eyes on the road. Maybe that's exactly why it works. Or why it will go wrong. Are you always so pessimistic? I'm a realist, Emily corrected. And the reality is that our lives are very different. You saw today, my principal humiliated me in front of everyone, and there's nothing I can do about it without risking my job. You've probably never been humiliated in your life. Michael let out a dry, humorless laugh. You'd be surprised. The difference is that when someone humiliates me, I have the resources to retaliate. You have to swallow it and move on, and that requires a strength I'm not sure I possess. They arrived at Emily's building, a 3-story structure with peeling paint and an external iron staircase that creaked as they began to climb. Michael carefully carried Lily, and Emily unlocked the apartment door, the number 7 almost faded on the metal plate. The apartment was small, a combined living room and kitchen, a bedroom that Emily and Lily shared, and a tiny bathroom. But it was clean and full of life, Lily's drawings covering the walls, plants. On the small balcony, books piled in every available corner. Michael gently placed Lily on the bed, and Emily covered her with the unicorn blanket, taking off the girl's shoes and placing a kiss on her forehead. When they returned to the living room, the reality of the moment hit them. They were alone, in Emily's private space, late at night. The tension that had built up throughout the day vibrated in the air between them. I should go, Michael said, but he didn't move. You should, Emily agreed, but took a step toward him. Emily? Stay, she whispered. Just a little longer, please. And he stayed. Monday arrived with the weight of an emotional hangover that Emily didn't know how to process. Michael had stayed until almost 2 in the morning, whispering in the small living room while they shared peppermint tea from mismatched mugs. He had left with a lingering kiss at the door, promising to call in the morning. But the morning brought something Emily hadn't expected. She was in the teacher's lounge during break, grading multiple-choice tests while sipping reheated coffee from the microwave, when Anna, her history teacher, her only real friend at school, heavily sat down beside her. "Did you see?" Anna asked bluntly, pushing her phone toward Emily. "See what?" On the screen was an article from the New York Times economy section. The headline read, "EduTech Innovations announces acquisition of LearnSmart for $30 million. Consolidation in the educational technology sector." Emily read the first paragraph, her stomach tightening with every word. EduTech Innovations, led by CEO Michael Anderson, had just acquired its main competitor. The article mentioned aggressive expansion plans, including partnerships with municipal education networks to implement digital platforms in classrooms. "Municipal networks," Emily repeated aloud, the realization hitting her like cold water. "Just like ours." "Exactly like ours," Anna confirmed, her voice low. "Emily, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but you need to know. There are rumors circulating among the directors that the city is negotiating contracts." Emily felt nausea rising in her throat. She let the tests fall onto the table, the pen rolling to the floor without her caring to pick it up. "He knew," she whispered. "He knew and didn't tell me." "You can't be sure of that." "Anna, he's the CEO of the company. Of course he knew." Emily's voice rose, and she forced herself to lower it, aware of the other teachers in the room. A $150 million acquisition doesn't happen overnight. This has been planned for months. Months. They've been getting to know each other for 2 months. All that time, was he planning this? Emily's phone vibrated on the table. A message from Michael. "Good morning. Thinking of you. Shall we have lunch together?" She looked at the message, at the article, back to the message. Her hands trembled as she typed the response. "I need to talk to you. It's important." The reply came immediately. "I'm in a meeting until noon. Can I pick you up from school at 12:30? "Okay." Emily spent the rest of the morning on autopilot. She taught 4th grade about complementary colors, but barely registered what she was saying. The kids noticed her distraction and took advantage, the classroom descending into a controlled chaos of spilled paint and side conversations that she didn't have the energy to curb. When the lunch bell finally rang, Emily was already at the school door, arms crossed over her chest, jaw clenched. Michael's grey sedan pulled up in front of the gate precisely at 12:30, punctual as always. She got into the car without a greeting, shutting the door harder than necessary. "Hi," Michael began, smiling, but the smile faded when he saw her expression. "What happened?" "Would you have told me about the acquisition of LearnSmart?" Emily asked bluntly. "Or was I going to find out through the newspaper like everyone else?" Michael's face visibly paled. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Emily, answer the question, Michael. Were you going to tell me?" "Yes," he finally said. "I was going to tell you. I was just waiting for the right timing." "The right timing?" she repeated, her voice heavy with disbelief. "We've been seeing each other for 2 months. What timing could be more right than, I don't know, before I started to trust you?" "I signed confidentiality agreements," Michael explained, his voice tense. "The acquisition was sensitive. If it leaked before the official announcement, it could compromise everything. I couldn't tell anyone, not even you." "But you could string me along, right? Show up with coffee every day, play with my daughter, kiss me in public, all while planning to come into my workplace with your corporate technology." "That's not how it works," Michael protested, his voice rising for the first time since she had known him. "LearnSmart provides educational tools. We're not trying to replace teachers or harm anyone. We're trying to help." Help who, Michael? Do you think I don't know how these partnerships work? Emily made air quotes with her fingers, sarcasm dripping from every word. First comes the beautiful free technology. Then come the performance analytics. Then come the reports on which teachers are adapting and which are not. And in the end, teachers like me who believe that art and humanity matter more than data and algorithms end up being seen as obstacles. You're being paranoid. I'm being realistic, Emily shouted, then lowered her voice upon realizing they were on the street in front of the school. You live in a world where money solves problems. I live in a world where money creates problems, and you can't see the difference. Michael ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. So what do you want me to do? Cancel the acquisition? Abandon 3 years of work because you're afraid of change? The words hit Emily like a physical punch. Afraid of change, as if her fears were irrational, as if she were the problem. To the car, she said, her voice dangerously calm. Emily, let's talk about this. To the car. He complied, pulling over to the curb. Emily opened the door immediately, stepping out without looking back. Emily, wait. But she was already walking back to the school, tears finally falling now that he couldn't see them. She heard the car leave behind her, heard him calling her name, but kept walking. When she reached the teacher's lounge, Anna was there, a worried expression on her face. Did you tell him? I did, Emily said, wiping her face with the back of her hands, and he made it very clear where his priorities lie. That afternoon was one of the longest of Emily's life. She taught second grade, helped clean the art room, organized materials for the following week, all mechanically, her brain working at a different frequency than her body. Her phone vibrated incessantly with messages from Michael. Please let me explain properly. I didn't mean to minimize your concerns. Can we talk? Really talk? Emily, please. She ignored them all. When she finally got home at 6 in the evening, emotionally and physically exhausted, she found Mrs. Johnson, her elderly neighbor, sitting in the worn armchair in the living room with Lily on her lap. The girl was watching cartoons on the small TV, but jumped up as soon as she saw her mother. Mom, Mrs. Johnson said she made chocolate fudge. I did, dear, Mrs. Johnson confirmed, getting up with the difficulty of her 73 years. She was a small woman, with completely white hair pulled into a bun, a face wrinkled by time, but with kind eyes. I hope... Emily felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Of course not, Mrs. Johnson. Thank you so much for watching her, she said, forcing a smile. How much do I owe you? Oh, stop it, dear. Mrs. Johnson waved her hand dismissively. You know I love Lily's company. She tells me stories about school and makes me laugh. It's the best part of my day. Emily felt tears threaten to spill. Mrs. Johnson had been caring for Lily for free for 3 years, ever since they moved into that small apartment in Queens. The woman was a widow without children of her own and had adopted Emily and Lily as the family she never had. Emily didn't know what she would do without her. Are you okay, dear? Mrs. Johnson asked, her keen eyes missing nothing. You look a bit down. Just tired, Emily lied. It's been a long day. Are you sure it's not a heart problem? Mrs. Johnson asked, raising an eyebrow. Lily told me about the guy from the party. Emily shot a glance at her daughter, who had the decency to look slightly guilty. Grandma Johnson asked. Lily defended herself. And Michael is nice. He promised to teach me how to use that drawing app on the tablet. He promised? Emily asked, surprised. When? When you went to get more spiced cider. He said if I wanted to learn digital art, he could teach me. Another piece of information Emily hadn't known. Another promise made to her daughter without consulting her first. Irritation simmered in her chest again. Well, we'll see about that, was all she said. After Mrs. Johnson left and Lily was distracted with her drawings, Emily finally allowed herself to collapse onto the worn sofa. She picked up her phone and scrolled through Michael's messages, rereading them with a knot in her stomach. Her finger hovered over the screen. Should she respond? Should she hear what he had to say? Before she could decide, the phone rang. Sarah. "Hi," Emily answered, her voice tired. "Don't you hi me, Emily Johnson." Sarah's voice came loud from the other end of the line. "Michael just called me completely frantic, saying you're mad at him and not responding to his messages. What happened?" Emily sighed. Sarah had been her best friend since high school, Lily's godmother, the person who had held her hand in the delivery room when Lily's father simply didn't show up. But Sarah had also been the one to orchestrate the meeting with Michael, and now Emily felt betrayed from all sides. "Did you know," Emily asked, "about his company trying to get into the public schools?" There was a pause. "Sarah, did you know?" "I had heard rumors," Sarah admitted reluctantly. "But that's not necessarily bad. Technology can—" "No," Emily interrupted. "Don't give me that corporate speech. You know me. You know how I feel about this. And you introduced him to me anyway, knowing it was a ticking time bomb. I introduced him because I thought you two would be good for each other," Sarah protested. "And I was right. Emily, you two are perfect together. He makes you happy in a way I haven't seen in years." "He lied to me." "He didn't lie. He withheld information he was legally obligated to keep confidential. Those are different things." "Maybe for you," Emily said bitterly. "To me, they seem exactly the same." "You're scared," Sarah said gently. "You're scared to trust him, scared he'll leave like Jake did. And I understand that, but Michael isn't Jake, he is—" "I need to go," Emily interrupted, not wanting to hear more. "Lily needs to have dinner." "Emily." She hung up. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. Emily made spaghetti with marinara sauce, the simplest, cheapest dish she knew how to make, and sat at the small kitchen table watching Lily eat while she chattered about school. The girl noticed something was wrong, her chatter eventually fading into a worried silence. "Mom, did you fight with Michael?" Lily finally asked, pushing the spaghetti around her plate. Emily considered lying, saying everything was fine, but she had made a promise to herself when Lily was born, to always be honest with her, within age-appropriate limits. "We had a disagreement," she admitted. "Sometimes adults disagree about important things. But are you going to make up?" Lily's eyes were wide, anxious. "Because I like him. He's nice to me, and he makes you smile." Emily felt her heart break a little. "I don't know, sweetheart. We'll have to see." "But—" "Lily, enough," Emily said, more sharply than she intended. "Finish your dinner." Lily obeyed in silence, and guilt joined the knot of bad emotions in Emily's chest. After putting Lily to bed, reading 2 extra stories as a silent apology for being short with her, Emily returned to the living room and finally allowed herself to break down. She sat on the floor, leaning against the sofa, and cried. She cried for the confusion, for the anger, for the fear of having found something good and watching it crumble. She cried because she was tired of fighting alone, but terrified of letting someone in. Her phone vibrated. Another message from Michael. "I understand if you don't want to talk to me right now, but you need to know, I never wanted to hurt you, and I won't give up on us without a fight. When you're ready to talk, I'll be here." Emily read the message 3 times before finally responding, "I need time to think." The reply came immediately. "As much time as you need. I'll wait." June arrived, bringing the coldest weather of the year. Mornings in New York dawned with a dense fog that covered the city like a grey blanket, and Emily woke up shivering in her poorly heated apartment, the thin blanket doing little to ward off the chill that seemed to come from deep within her bones. 2 weeks had passed since the argument in the car. 2 weeks during which Michael respected Her request for space, limiting himself to a daily message, always simple, never demanding. Good morning. Thinking of you. Hope you're well. Emily didn't respond, but she also didn't block the number. It was a contradiction she wasn't ready to examine too closely. The school had fallen into a tense routine. Rumors about the partnership with EduTech Innovations continued to circulate, growing in detail each day. Some teachers were excited about the possibility of new technology. Others, like Emily, saw it as the beginning of the end of the humanistic teaching they fought to preserve with minimal resources. It was on a Thursday, during the lunch break, that everything fell apart. Emily was in the teacher's lounge, eating a takeout of rice and eggs she had prepared the night before, when her phone rang. An unknown number with an area code from Los Angeles. She answered hesitantly. Hello, Emily Johnson. A deep, vaguely familiar male voice. Yes, who is this? Jake Anderson, Lily's father. Emily nearly dropped the phone. Her heart raced, blood buzzing in her ears. Jake, the man who had disappeared 4 years ago without a word, without an explanation, leaving her, alone with a 2-year-old, and doubts that took years to settle. What do you want? Her voice came out colder than ice. I need to talk to you. About Lily. You have nothing to discuss about her. You abandoned us. You lost any right— I know, Jake interrupted, and there was a strange quality in his voice, something Emily couldn't identify. And I regret it, Emily. Every day I regret it. But now I want to make things right. I want to see my daughter. Emily felt nausea rise in her throat. Anna, who was sitting across the table, noticed something was wrong and made a questioning gesture. Emily shook her head, getting up and leaving the room to the empty hallway. You can't just show up after 4 years and demand rights, Jake. That's not how it works. I'm not demanding anything, he said, but there was an underlying hardness in his voice that contradicted his words. I'm asking. But if necessary, I will seek my rights legally. Visitation rights, joint custody. I'm her father, Emily. You were a sperm donor who ran away when— Things got tough, Emily hissed, trying to keep her voice low in the hallway. You haven't paid a dime in child support. You didn't call even once to see if she was alive. And now you want rights? People change. I've changed. I'm stable now. I have a steady job, my own apartment. I can offer her things that you— He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. The implication was clear. What, that I can't? Because I'm poor? Because I live in a rented apartment and work as a teacher? That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. And you know what, Jake? Go ahead and sue. Try, but I will fight with every ounce of strength I have to keep you away from my daughter. Because I was there when she had chickenpox and spent 3 sleepless nights. I was there on her first day of school when she cried out of fear. I was there in every moment, good or bad. Where were you? Silence on the other end of the line. That's what I thought, Emily said, and hung up with trembling hands. She leaned against the cold wall of the hallway, trying to control her breathing, which came in irregular gasps. It couldn't be. Not now. Not when everything was already so complicated. The rest of the day passed in a haze of anxiety. Emily barely registered the classes she taught, the questions her students asked. Her mind was stuck in a worst-case scenario loop. Jake suing for custody, judges examining her precarious financial situation, Lily being forced to visit a stranger who shared her DNA, but nothing more. When she finally got home at 6 in the evening, Mrs. Johnson was in the living room with Lily, as always. But there was something different in the elderly woman's expression. Worry mixed with something heavier. Emily, dear, we need to talk, Mrs. Johnson said as soon as Lily ran to her room to fetch a drawing to show her mother. What is it, Mrs. Johnson? The older woman took a deep breath, her wrinkled hands clasped in her lap. I received a call from my daughter today. Sarah, in Chicago. Her husband had a heart attack. Emily felt the ground shift beneath her feet. My God, is he okay? He will be, thank God. But he will need care, complete rest for months. And Sarah, she has 3 small children, works full-time. She can't manage alone. Mrs. Johnson paused, her eyes misty. She asked me to go there, to help. For how long? Emily asked, already knowing the answer. Permanently, dear. She wants me to move there. Emily's world crumbled a little more. Mrs. Johnson was her only support network, the only person she completely trusted to take care of Lily. Without her, when was all Emily could manage to ask. By the end of the week, Saturday morning, 3 days. She had 3 days to figure out. I'm so sorry, dear, Mrs. Johnson said, standing up and gently touching Emily's face. If I had another option. No, no, Emily forced herself to say. You have to go. Your daughter needs you. We'll figure it out. We always do. But when Mrs. Johnson left and Emily was alone in the living room while Lily played in her room, she had no idea how they would manage. Without Mrs. Johnson, there was no one to pick up Lily. From school, when Emily had parent-teacher meetings or needed to stay late, there was no one to take care of her when Lily got sick and couldn't go to school. Daycares had months-long waiting lists and cost more than she could afford. Nannies were expensive, and besides, how could she trust a stranger with the most precious thing in her life? Her phone vibrated. A message from Michael, as always at the same time. Good evening. I hope you had a peaceful day. Emily stared at the message for a long moment. Then, for the first time in 2 weeks, she replied, I need to talk to you. Can you come over tomorrow after school? The response was almost instantaneous. Of course. What time? 7 p.m. I'll be there. Emily spent the night sleepless, mentally rehearsing what she would say. She didn't want to ask for help. Asking for help meant admitting weakness, meant owing something, meant putting herself in a vulnerable position. But what else could she do? Friday dragged on endlessly. Emily taught on autopilot, barely responding when colleagues tried to engage her in conversation. In the afternoon, Principal Johnson called an emergency faculty meeting. I have an important announcement, Principal Johnson began, standing in front of the packed teachers' lounge. The city has officially approved the partnership with EduTech Innovations to implement educational technology in our network. Starting next semester, all classrooms will have tablets and access to the company's digital platforms. An immediate buzz filled the room. Some teachers applauded. Others, including Emily, remained silent, processing. There will be mandatory training during the July break, Principal Johnson continued. And next year, student performance on the digital platforms will be incorporated into teacher performance evaluations. Emily felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Performance evaluations based on technology use. Teachers like her, who valued art and creativity over quantifiable data, would be penalized. Anna caught her eye from across the room, concern clear on her face. When the meeting ended, Emily went straight home, unable to fully process what she had just heard. Everything was crumbling at once. Jake reappearing, Mrs. Johnson leaving, the school being taken over by corporate technology. At exactly 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. Emily opened the door to find Michael standing in the narrow hallway. He looked different, thinner, with deep circles under his eyes, his stubble unshaven. He wore jeans and a leather jacket, his hands buried in his pockets. Hi, he said softly. Hi, come in. Lily was in her room, probably listening to everything with the insatiable curiosity of children. Emily and Michael sat on the sofa, a careful space between them. How are you? Michael asked. Terrible, Emily replied honestly. Everything is falling apart, Michael, all at once. And then, like a dam breaking, she told him everything. About Jake calling, threatening to sue for custody, about Mrs. Johnson having to move, about the meeting at school, the partnership with EduTech Innovations being officially announced. Michael listened in silence, his face growing darker. "As for Jake," he said carefully when she finished, "I can help. I have excellent lawyers specializing in family law. We can—" "No," Emily interrupted. "I don't want your expensive lawyers fighting my battles." "Emily, be reasonable. He's threatening you. You need legal protection." "I need it, but not from you," she replied, frustration boiling over. "Don't you understand? Accepting your help now, with everything happening, would be selling out. It would prove that everyone is right about me." "Right about what?" "That I'm a gold digger. That I'm only with you for the money." The words came out in a shout, and Emily immediately lowered her voice, aware of Lily in the other room. "The principal has already hinted at that. If I accept your legal help now, it will confirm everything she thinks." "Who cares what she thinks?" Michael asked, clearly frustrated. "I do!" Emily stood up, unable to stay still. "Because those things stick, Michael. Reputation matters when you don't have money or power to protect yourself. All I have is my integrity, my honest work. If I lose that, I have nothing left. You have Lily. You have people who love you. And that's exactly the point." Emily turned to face him, tears finally falling. "I have Lily, and I need to protect her. From the biological father who wants to suddenly show up. From losing the only person who helps us. From everything." "From me?" Michael asked quietly. "Do you need to protect yourself from me too?" Emily wiped her face with the back of her hands. "I don't know, honestly. I don't know anything anymore. Your company just closed a deal with the city, Michael. My school is going to be taken over by your technology. How am I supposed to feel about that?" "It was inevitable," he said, also standing up. "With or without me, technology was going to come to that school. At least with EduTech Innovations, I can ensure it's implemented ethically, that teachers are heard." "Stop," Emily interrupted. "Stop making it sound like you're doing me a favor. You made a deal, a multi-million-dollar deal." Emily felt her heart breaking into pieces. She knelt, opening her arms, and Lily ran into them. "No one is leaving, my love," she whispered. But the words sounded hollow even to her. "Own ears." Michael watched the scene, his face marked by emotions too complex to name. "I'm going to leave you two," he finally said. "But Emily, I'm not giving up. In your own way, you let me in. And I'm not going away just because it got hard." He walked to the door, paused, and turned back. "And about Jake? Even if you don't want my help directly, I'll send you the contact of the best family lawyers I know. What you do with that information is your choice, but I won't stand by and watch you and Lily suffer." Out of pride, then he left, and Emily remained there on the floor with her daughter crying in her arms, feeling more alone than she had in years. July arrived, bringing school holidays and an unexpected strike. The public school teachers, tired of delayed salaries and poor conditions, voted for a shutdown on the last day of June. For Emily, it meant going without a paycheck for an indefinite period, just when she needed it the most. Mrs. Johnson had passed away the previous Saturday, leaving a void in the apartment that went far beyond her physical absence. It was as if the safety net Emily had carefully built over the years had been ripped away all at once, leaving her in free fall. Now, on a cold, grey Tuesday morning, Emily sat at the kitchen table surrounded by envelopes, electricity bills, water bills, rent, all with red overdue notices. Her bank statement showed a balance that made her stomach churn, $287.43. The rent was due in 5 days and was $200. Lily was in the living room watching cartoons, oblivious to the silent storm brewing around her. Emily had managed to keep her occupied and happy in recent weeks. But how long could she sustain the illusion that everything was fine? Her phone vibrated. A message from Sarah. "Call me, please." Emily ignored it, just as she had ignored all of Sarah's messages in recent weeks. She didn't have the energy to deal with lectures about pride or how she was being irrational with Michael. Another envelope arrived in the mail that morning. This one she had saved for last because she recognized the law firm's logo at the top. With trembling hands, she opened it. It was official. Jake Smith was suing for joint custody and visitation rights. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks. The paper included a list of requirements she would need to present: proof of income, housing conditions, character references. Emily read the document 3 times, each word sinking deeper into her chest. Proof of income. She was temporarily unemployed, housing conditions, a tiny apartment that barely had space for 2 people. How would this play out in court? She thought of the business card that Michael had discreetly left on the coffee table before leaving that terrible night. Dr. Mark Anderson, family law specialist. Emily had tossed the card into a drawer, refusing to look at it. But now, no, she couldn't. Accepting help from him now would be crossing a line she wasn't ready to cross. Instead, Emily grabbed her phone and called the only lawyer she knew, Dr. Robert, a man in his 60s who had helped her mother years ago with a labor dispute. The consultation would cost $200, which she didn't have, but she saw no other option. The meeting was set for Thursday. The following days were a blur of anxiety and insomnia. Emily woke up at 3 in the morning with her heart racing, her mind spinning with increasingly worse scenarios. What if she lost Lily? What if a judge decided that Jake, with his newly acquired financial stability, was the better option? What if everything she had fought for in the last 6 years was ripped away from her? On Thursday, Emily left Lily with a neighbor from downstairs, a woman in her 30s with 2 kids of her own, who agreed to watch the girl for a few hours in exchange for $50. More money than she didn't have. Dr. Roberts' office was in a small, cramped room in an old commercial building in downtown New York. The walls were lined with dusty legal bookshelves, and there was a smell of old paper and stale coffee in the air. Dr. Robert was a short, round man with carefully combed grey hair and thick glasses that kept slipping down his nose. He listened to Emily's story attentively, occasionally jotting down notes on a yellow pad. When she finished, he took off his glasses and carefully cleaned them with a cloth. "Miss Johnson, I'm going to be honest with you," he began, and the tone of his voice made Emily's stomach drop. "The case is not simple. The father has a legal right to seek a relationship with his daughter, even having been absent. Courts tend to favor maintaining parental bonds unless there is evidence of danger to the child." "But he abandoned us," Emily protested. 4 years without a single contact. Yes, and that weighs in his favor, but he can argue that he has changed, that he is in a better situation now. And regarding your situation, he consulted his notes. "Temporarily unemployed, living in a small apartment without a family support network." "I'm not unemployed, I'm on strike." "It's different. To a judge, it may not seem so different," Dr. Roberts said gently. "Understand, I'm not saying you're not a good mother. I'm sure you are excellent. But in court, appearances matter. Stability matters." Emily felt tears stinging her eyes. "So you're saying I'm going to lose my daughter?" "Not necessarily, but it's going to be a tough battle. And expensive." He paused, clearly uncomfortable. "My fees for a case like this would be at least $5,000 up front, plus court costs. And that's being generous, because I remember your mother fondly." $5,000. It might as well be 5 million. I don't have that," Emily admitted, her voice breaking. "I don't even have a tenth of that." Dr. Roberts sighed heavily. "You could seek public defense. They are competent, but they are overwhelmed. The service might take weeks, and you have a hearing in 3 weeks. So what do I do?" Emily asked, hating the desperation in her own voice. "Honestly," Dr. Robert leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table, If you know someone who can help, someone with resources, this would be the time to swallow your pride and ask. Because alone, with the cards you have in hand, it's going to be very difficult to win this case. Emily left the office with shaky legs and blurry vision from tears. She wandered aimlessly through the busy streets of downtown, passing clothing stores, street vendors, and hurried executives heading to lunch. The world kept spinning, indifferent to the fact that hers was crumbling. Eventually, she found herself sitting on a bench in a park, watching pigeons fight over breadcrumbs that tourists tossed. Her phone rang. Sarah again. This time, Emily answered. "Hi." "Thank God." Sarah's voice was laden with relief. "Emily, I know you're mad at me, but I need to talk to you." "I'm not mad. I'm tired." "I know, and that's why I need to tell you something." Sarah took a deep breath. "Jake, you need to know. He didn't show up out of paternal remorse." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "I have a friend who works in HR at a consulting firm. Jake was hired there 3 months ago, and who funded the consulting, who basically created that position for him, was the Anderson family, Michael's family." The world stopped, literally stopped. The sounds around Emily became distant and muffled, as if she were underwater. "What?" "The Anderson family has been pressuring him for months to return to Los Angeles and take over his father's company, which is in serious financial trouble. They chose a suitable bride for him, the daughter of a major investor. When Jake refused, they decided to create problems here to force him to come back." Sarah's voice was heavy with anger. "They found out about you through private investigators. They discovered Lucas, and they offered money and a good job if he showed up, and sued you for custody." Emily couldn't breathe. She literally couldn't pull air into her lungs. How do you know this?" "Because my friend overheard a conversation she shouldn't have, and because Michael found out last night and called me completely desperate. He's on his way to New York now, Em. He dropped everything and is coming." "Why?" Emily asked, but it was a stupid question. She already knew the answer. "Because he loves you, you idiot. And because his family crossed every line, he cut ties with them officially. He gave up the inheritance, the family name in the business, everything." Emily hung up the phone with trembling hands. She sat on that bench for an indefinite amount of time, processing the information. Michael's family had done this. They had used Lucas as a pawn to destroy her life and force Michael to return. And Michael had given up everything. For her. Her phone rang again. Michael this time. With shaking fingers, she answered. "Emily, are you okay? Sarah told me you talked." His voice was tense, worried. "I'm arriving in New York in 2 hours. I need to see you. I need to explain." "Did you know," she interrupted, "about your family hiring Lucas?" "No, I swear I didn't. I found out yesterday through my accountant, who noticed suspicious transfers from my father's account. When I confronted him, he admitted everything, as if it were a normal business strategy." There was disgust in Michael's voice. "I broke up with them, Emily, right there on the phone. I told them I never wanted contact again." "You didn't have to do that." "I did. They attacked you. They attacked Lily. They used your pain as a manipulation tool." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. "And I realized something. I spent my whole life trying to prove to them that I was more than just the heir. But no matter what I do, they will always see me as property, as an extension of their business. So I chose something different. I chose to have a life that is truly mine." Emily wiped the tears that were now flowing freely. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just Please let me help you now. No pride, no arguments. The lawyer I referred you to, Dr. Mark, is already preparing a lawsuit against Lucas and my family for manipulation and conspiracy. We have evidence, bank transfers, emails. We can end this before the hearing. Michael, please, not for me, for Lily. She deserves to be protected. And there, on that cold bench in Union Square, surrounded by strangers and pigeons and the distant noise of the city, Emily finally let her defenses down. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I accept. Your help." She could almost hear his relief through the line. "I'm sending a driver to pick you up. Where are you?" "Union Square." "But, Michael, there's one more thing." "What?" "The rent. It's due in 3 days and I don't have the money. With the strike, She swallowed the pride that had defined her whole life. "I'm going to be evicted. And if I'm evicted, the judge will use that against me in the custody case." Silence on the other end, but not a silence of judgment. A silence of someone thinking, calculating, resolving. "How much do you need?" "1,200 for the rent, and there are other bills, electricity, water. About 400 more. Each number felt like pulling a tooth." "I will pay you back, every penny. With interest. I'll make a contract. I will." "Emily, stop," he gently interrupted. "It's not a loan, and we're not going to discuss this now. The money will be in your account in an hour. Then we can talk about everything, but right now you just need to breathe, okay? It's not fair. To you. Let me decide what's fair to me." There was something firm in his voice, but also tenderness. "You spent 6 years taking care of Lily alone. Let someone take care of you for a moment." When they hung up, Emily sat there, looking at her phone in her hand. She had spent so much time building walls, so much time proving she didn't need anyone. But maybe needing someone wasn't weakness. Maybe it was just being human. Her phone vibrated with a banking notification. Transfer received $2,500 more than she had asked for. More than she had admitted to needing. And for the first time in weeks, Emily allowed herself to cry, not out of despair, but out of relief. Out of gratitude, out of something she was afraid to name, but that she felt growing in her chest like stubborn flowers breaking through cracked concrete. She picked up her phone and typed, "Thank you for everything." The response came quickly. "Always. See you in 2 hours." Emily sat there for a few more minutes, letting the weak winter sun touch her face, listening to the sounds of the city around her. Then she stood up, wiped her face, and began to walk. She still had a daughter waiting at home. She still had a battle ahead. But now, for the first time, she wasn't fighting alone. And that made all the difference. Michael arrived at Emily's apartment at 7 in the evening, carrying 2 grocery bags and an expression of determination she had never seen in him before. His face was tired, deep, dark circles, stubble for at least 2 days. But his eyes shone with something intense when they met hers. Lily ran to the door before Emily could fully open it. "Michael, you're back!" the girl shouted, throwing herself into his arms with the confidence of someone who never doubted his presence. He picked her up, spinning her in the air like he had done at the school fair. And Emily saw something break and rebuild on his face at the same time. "Of course I came back," he said, bending down to be at Lily's height. "I promised I wouldn't leave, remember?" "Promises are important," Lily said with the seriousness of a very small judge. "Mummy said there are people who break promises, but I told her, you don't." Michael looked at Emily over Lily's head, and there were so many unspoken things in that look that she had to look away. "Your mom was right to be cautious," he said to Lily, "but you were also right. I don't break promises." He entered the apartment, placing the bags on the kitchen table. Emily peeked inside them. There was enough food for 2 weeks. Rice, beans, pasta, fresh fruits, vegetables, meat, chocolate. And at the bottom of one of the bags, she saw a large box of professional colored pencils, the kind she always looked at in the stationery store but could never buy. "Michael," she started. "Later," he gently interrupted. "First, let's have dinner, all together, like a real family does." The word family hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Lily, completely oblivious to the adults' tension, was already exploring the bags with shouts of joy. "There's strawberries! Mommy, there's strawberries! And look, ice cream!" "You can't have ice cream before dinner," Emily said automatically. "But what if the ice cream is dinner?" Lily asked hopefully. "Good try," Michael replied, laughing. "How about we make a deal? A real dinner first, ice cream later." "You know how to negotiate?" Lily conceded with a dramatic sigh. They cooked together, or rather Michael and Lily cooked while Emily watched, still processing everything that had happened that day. Michael was surprisingly competent in the kitchen, moving efficiently as he prepared simple spaghetti with marinara sauce and salad. "Where did you learn to cook?" Emily finally asked, sitting at the small kitchen table. "When I moved to New York, I lived alone for the first time in my life," he replied, chopping tomatoes with precision. "It was either learn to cook or live on delivery, and delivery gets expensive after 3 years. The billionaire CEO worried about delivery costs," Emily commented, but she was smiling. "Ex-billionaire heir," he corrected, and there was something liberating in his voice. "Now just the CEO of a company that is still establishing itself and may or may not survive without family investments." Emily felt her stomach tighten. "Is it at risk? The company?" "I don't know yet," he admitted. "My father controlled 40% of the shares through investors he brought in. With the breakup, they might jump ship, but I can also seek new investors who believe in the project, not just the last name. You sacrificed a lot." He stopped chopping the tomatoes and looked directly at her. "I didn't sacrifice anything that truly mattered to me. That was never mine, Emily. It was theirs, their money, their connections, their expectations. For the first time in my life, I truly own what I build." Lily, who had been exceptionally quiet listening to the adults, suddenly asked, "Are you poor now, like us?" Emily nearly choked, but Michael laughed. "Not exactly, but I have to work for my money now without a safety net. It's liberating and terrifying at the same time." "Welcome to the club," Emily murmured. Dinner was surprisingly normal. Lily chatted about cartoons, about the flowers she had planted in yogurt cups on the balcony, about how she dreamed she was a mermaid saving the ocean from pollution. Michael listened with genuine attention, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. Emily watched the two of them, and something painful and sweet expanded in her chest. This simple scene of family dinner, voices overlapping, laughter filling the small apartment, was something she had given up believing she could have. After the ice cream, chocolate for Lily, vanilla for Emily and Michael, and after putting Lily to bed with 2 stories and 3 glasses of water, classic bedtime procrastination tactics, Emily and Michael finally found themselves alone in the living room. The tension that had been kept at bay during dinner now returned with full force. They sat on the sofa, a cautious space between them, the heavy silence of unspoken things. "The lawyer," Michael began. "Dr. Mark, he'll call tomorrow to schedule a meeting. He already has the evidence against my father and Jake. Bank transfers, emails, even recordings of phone conversations my accountant managed to get before I cut ties. With the family. Is that legal? The recordings?" "Technically, yes, as long as at least one party in the conversation knows it's being recorded. My accountant was on the calls as my father's assistant." Michael ran a hand through his hair. The point is, we have enough ammunition to destroy Jake's case before it even reaches court, and possibly sue my father for conspiracy, harassment, and half a dozen other things. Your own father. Someone who just happens to have contributed half of my DNA, Michael corrected, his voice harsh. He's not my father in any sense that matters. A father doesn't use someone else's child as a manipulation tool. Emily fell silent for a moment, processing. And the company, EduTech Innovations, what happens now? I have a meeting with new investors next week. International investors interested in the educational project, not in my family lineage. He turned on the couch to face her completely. But there's a condition they've set. What is it? They want to expand globally. They want me to consider opening a headquarters in San Francisco, or at least spend half the year there, overseeing the American expansion. Emily's stomach sank. For how long? At least 2 years, maybe more. Silence, a silence that stretched and deepened until it hurt physically. So you're going, Emily finally said, hating how small and weak her voice sounded. I don't know, Michael replied honestly. It's the opportunity I've been waiting for years, a chance to take EduTech Innovations to the next level, to really make a global difference in education. But it means leaving you, leaving Lily. And I don't know if that's what I want. Emily felt tears burning, her eyes, but she forced them down. You can't put this on me, Michael. You can't make this decision my responsibility. It's not about responsibility, he said, frustration clear in his voice. It's about what we want to build together, if we want to build something together. How? Emily asked, and all the exhaustion and confusion of the past weeks leaked into her voice. How do we build something when you're on the other side of the world? When our lives are so different? When you're scared? Michael gently interrupted. You can say it, Emily. You're terrified of trusting me, of letting Lily get attached, of believing this could work. Of course I'm terrified, she exploded. Did you see what happened? Your family literally tried to destroy me because I'm not suitable for you. And they're right, Michael. I am not suitable. I'm a broke public school teacher with a daughter and financial problems. You are you. And who am I that's so impressive? He shot back, his voice rising. A 36-year-old man who has spent his whole life trying to prove something to a father who will never see me as anything but a disappointment, someone who knows how to build a business but didn't know how to make a bologna sandwich until he met you, who is so emotionally inept that he needed a 6-year-old to teach him the difference between really listening and just waiting for his turn to speak. He stood up, unable to stay still, pacing back and forth in the tiny space of the room. Do you think I'm not terrified too? Do you think it's easy for me to admit that I need you? That for the first time in my life, I found someone who makes me want to be more than my resume and my bank account? So what do you want from me? Emily asked, also standing up. Do you want me to say don't go? To stay here and give up the opportunity of your life for me? Because I'm not going to do that. I can't be the reason you have regrets 10 years from now. It's not giving up. Michael stopped in front of her, so close she could feel his warmth. It's choosing. It's deciding that some things, some people, are more important than career opportunities. And what if you regret it? And what if you regret it? He shot back. What if you spend the rest of your life protecting yourself so much that you never let anyone really in? Is that life, Emily? Is that what you want to teach Lily? That love is too risky to try. The words hit Emily like a physical slap. She thought of Lily, her brilliant and brave daughter, who jumped in puddles without fear of getting wet, who made friends with strangers in the park, who loved with her heart wide open. I don't want her to be like me, Emily whispered. I don't want her to be afraid to trust people. Then show her that she doesn't have to be afraid, Michael said softly, cupping Emily's face in his hands. Trust me, please. Just trust. Emily closed her eyes, tears finally escaping and running down her cheeks. She could feel his hands, warm and firm, holding her as if she were something precious. And if you hurt me, she asked, her voice breaking, I probably will, unintentionally, because I'm human and I make mistakes, and you'll probably hurt me too. He wiped her tears with his thumbs. But we'll hurt together, and we'll heal together, and we'll learn together, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Emily opened her eyes, finding those light brown eyes she had first seen in an Italian restaurant months ago when her whole life was different. I'm scared. I know, I am too. But if we do this, if we really try, it has to be our way. It can't be you saving me. It can't be me as your charity project. It was never about saving you, Michael said, intensity burning in his voice. It's about building something together, as partners, as equals. You bring strength, resilience, passion. I bring, organization and money to pay for expensive lawyers. He smiled slightly. Together, we're stronger than apart. Equals, Emily repeated, testing the word. Do you really believe that we're equals? Emily, you raised an amazing child on your own for 6 years with minimal resources. You inspire students every day to see beauty and art in a world. Emily Johnson constantly tries to tell them that it doesn't matter. You face prejudice and difficulty and still wake up every day and choose to be kind. He touched his forehead to hers. Do you think I'm superior to you because I have more money in the bank? Money is the least interesting part about me. You are entirely interesting. And there, in that small and cramped apartment surrounded by peeling walls and old furniture, Emily Johnson finally did the bravest thing of her life. She chose to believe. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I trust you. I want to try. Really try. The smile that lit up Michael's face was like the sun rising after a long, dark night. He pulled her into a hug, holding her so tightly that she could barely breathe, but she didn't mind. She sank into that embrace, in that moment, in that impossible and scary choice to let someone in. When they finally separated, Michael kept his hands on her shoulders. About San Francisco, he said. I have a proposal. What? Come with me, you and Lily, for 2 years. I know it's asking a lot, but... Michael, Emily interrupted. I can't just pull Lily out of her school, away from her friends, from the only life she knows. There are excellent schools in San Francisco, and you could go back to working as an architect. There's a market there, opportunities. You don't have to be stuck in a job that doesn't value you. It was tempting. God, it was so tempting. Starting over, away from judgment, away from the poverty that suffocated her. But what if it doesn't work out? Emily asked. What if we get there and realize that we are not what we thought? Lily would be stuck in a foreign country, far from everything she knows. Michael fell silent, clearly not having considered that. You're right, he finally admitted. It was selfish of me to suggest this without thinking of all the implications. It wasn't selfish. It was romantic. But we have to think with our heads, not just our hearts. Especially when there's a child involved. They sat back down on the couch, closer now, their knees touching. So what do? Michael asked. We take it slow. We solve one thing at a time. First, the issue with Jake and his family. Then, the issue with your company and the investors. And then we see where we are and decide together what makes sense. Emily took his hand, intertwining their fingers. But if you need to go to San Francisco, you will. And we'll figure out how to make it work from a distance, because I won't be the reason you don't pursue your dreams. And your dreams, Michael asked. What do you want, Emily? Really? She thought about it. What did she want? I want Lily to grow up knowing she can be whatever she wants. I want to go back to designing, to creating, to doing real architecture. I want to wake up in the morning and not be afraid to check my bank account. She looked at him. And I want someone who sees me, really sees me. Not the struggling, single mother, not the brave teacher. Just me. I see you, Michael said simply. I've always seen you. And when he kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise, Emily believed him. September arrived with spring, bringing a lightness to the air that New York hadn't felt in months. The city's trees began to bloom with pink and yellow flowers, and there was something in the scent of renewal that seemed to reflect the changes in Emily's life. The hearing with Jake had been cancelled 2 weeks earlier. Dr. Mark, the lawyer Michael had recommended, had presented the evidence of conspiracy and manipulation so devastatingly that Jake's lawyer dropped the case the same day. Jake tried to reach out one last time, a pathetic text message apologizing and saying he was just trying to make a living. Emily blocked the number without responding. Some things didn't even deserve the effort of a reply. The Anderson family had been more problematic. Michael's father tried legal threats, then bribes, and finally empty emotional appeals that Michael completely ignored. His mother showed up in New York unannounced, appearing at the EduTech Innovations office with rehearsed tears and accusations that Emily had bewitched her son. Michael sent her away in 5 minutes. "Did you raise a man who can't make his own choices?" he had asked coldly. "Or do you simply not respect that I might want something different from what you planned for me?" She left without an answer, but not before shooting a look of pure venom in Emily's direction, who had been in the next room listening to everything. Now, on a sunny Saturday morning, Emily was sitting on the floor of the apartment surrounded by papers, colored pencils, and the glorious mess of creativity. For the first time in 7 years, she was drawing again. Not childish sketches for art classes, but real architectural projects. The project in front of her was for the renovation of a cultural center in a neighborhood in Brooklyn. The city had opened a public bidding process, and Sarah, who worked in the cultural department, had insisted that Emily apply. "You have a degree in architecture, Em. You spent years letting that talent go to waste because you had to survive. But now you have time, you have resources, use it." So Emily was using it. The apartment was covered in floor plans, facade sketches, studies of natural lighting. Lily had become her unofficial assistant, organizing colored pencils by shade and offering decisive opinions on which color combinations had more flair. Michael was in the kitchen making heart-shaped pancakes. It had become a Saturday morning ritual in recent weeks. He would show up at 9, always bringing fresh ingredients, and cooked while Emily worked and Lily watched cartoons. It was domestic, comfortable, alarmingly normal. "Mom!" Lily shouted from the tiny balcony where she was watering her plants. "The pink flower bloomed! Come see!" Emily got up, her joints cracking after 2 hours sitting on the floor, and joined her daughter on the minuscule balcony. There, in a yogurt cup turned into a pot, a small pink flower had indeed blossomed. "You did this," Emily said, hugging Lily from behind. "You took care of it every day, watered it just right, put it in the sun, and look at the result." "It's pretty, right?" Lily said with absolute pride. "Michael said that plants are like promises. If you take care of them properly, they bloom." Emily felt something tighten in her chest. Michael had a way with words, especially with Lily. He never spoke to her as if she were a child. He spoke as if she were a small person with valid opinions and real feelings. "He's right," Emily agreed. "Pancakes are ready," Michael called from the kitchen. "And this time I didn't burn any." They settled at the small table, which had been replaced by a larger one that Michael bought without asking for permission, claiming that 3 people need space to eat decently. Emily had complained on principle, but secretly she was grateful. The pancakes were heart-shaped, topped with sliced strawberries and honey. Lily attacked hers with the enthusiasm of someone who hadn't eaten in days, despite the cereal she had devoured 2 hours earlier. "So," Michael began, taking a sip of coffee, "I have news." Emily felt her stomach tighten. News could be good or bad, and in recent months she had experienced quite a bit of both. What kind of news? The investors approved the proposal. They want to invest $50 million in the expansion of EduTech Innovations. He paused, choosing his words carefully, but they kept the condition of the headquarters in San Francisco. There it was, the bombshell that Emily knew was coming. "For how long?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral for Lily's sake. 2 years initially, with the possibility of extension. Michael looked at her, then at Lily, back to her. "But I negotiated something. Instead of moving permanently, I'll spend 1 week there, 1 week here, alternating. It's not ideal, but you'll be gone half the time," Emily completed, something warm expanding in her chest. "You negotiated this for us." "I negotiated this for myself too," he corrected, "because half the time with you is still better than full-time away." Lily, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly asked, "You're going back and forth, like the swallows that Teacher Maria said migrate?" Michael laughed. "Exactly like the swallows, only in planes, not with wings." "Planes are boring," Lily declared. "Wings would be cooler." "True," Michael agreed seriously. "I'll suggest that to the investors." After breakfast, while Lily was distracted drawing in the living room, Emily and Michael washed dishes side by side in the tiny kitchen. It was a dance they had perfected. She washed, he rinsed, moving in comfortable sync. "Are you sure about this?" Emily finally asked. "Flying every week is going to be exhausting and expensive." "The company pays for the tickets," Michael replied, "and yes, it will be exhausting. But it's the deal that works. I build the company, but I won't give up on you. Middle ground." "It's not really middle ground. You're making all the sacrifices." He stopped rinsing and turned to her. "Emily, stop doing this." "Doing what?" "Minimizing what you offer, as if I'm the only one making concessions." There was frustration in his voice, but also tenderness. "You're trusting me. You're letting me be part of Lily's life. You're giving me space to be part of something real that's not small." Emily dried her hands on a dish towel, considering his words. "It still feels unequal." "Well, then let's even it out," he said. "How much time did you spend working on that cultural center project?" "About 40 hours this week. Why? Are you going to apply for the bid?" "I'll try, but there are dozens of more experienced architects competing. My chances are—" "Better than you think," Michael interrupted. "And when you win, not if, when, you're going to need an office. You can't manage a project of that size from the kitchen table." "Michael, I don't have money to rent an office. But I have empty space in the EduTech Innovations building, 3rd floor, a room with a view of 5th Avenue, high-speed internet, furniture I'm not using." He raised his hand when she started to protest. "Before you say no, it's not a favor. It's a partnership. You use the space, and in return, you can do design consulting for our offices when we expand. Win-win." Emily wanted to argue, wanted to say she couldn't accept that it was too much, but she was tired of fighting. Tired of turning every help into a matter of pride. "Win-win," she finally agreed, "but with a formal contract, no handshakes and vague promises." "I wouldn't do it any other way," Michael smiled. "My lawyer is already preparing the papers." Of course he was. The rest of September passed at a dizzying speed. The teachers' strike ended with a partial negotiation. Not perfect, but better than nothing. Emily returned to school, but now it was different. She had a side project, had a purpose beyond just surviving. The art classes gained new energy. She started teaching basic principles of architecture to the older students, showing how technical drawing and creativity could combine. Principal Johnson watched with obvious disapproval but couldn't say anything. The students were engaged and the parents were happy. And then came the day of the bidding announcement. Emily was in the teacher's lounge when she received the email. Anna was beside her, biting her nails in anxiety even though it wasn't her project. "Open it," Anna ordered. "Stop stalling." With trembling hands, Emily clicked on the email. She read the first line, read it again, read it a third time because she couldn't believe it. "I won," she whispered. "Anna, I won." "You won," Anna shouted, jumping out of her chair. "Emily, you won." The noise attracted other teachers who gathered around wanting to know what was happening. Emily barely registered it, her eyes fixed on her phone screen, on the words that changed everything. "Dear Mrs. Johnson, we are pleased to inform you that your proposal has been selected for the renovation of the Cultural Center in Brooklyn. Your project demonstrated exceptional creativity, technical feasibility, and a deep understanding of the community's needs." She had done it. Alone, with her own talent and hard work. The first person she wanted to tell was Michael, but he was in San Francisco, the first of many week-long trips that would be their new reality. She sent a message. "I won the bid." The reply came in seconds. "I knew it. I'm so proud of you. Video call when you get home?" "Yes." That night, after putting Lily to bed, who insisted on celebrating with chocolate cake from the bakery, Emily sat on the couch with her laptop open. When Michael answered the video call, she could see San Francisco through the window behind him, the Golden Gate Bridge visible in the distance. "Show me the project," he immediately requested. Emily spent the next hour showcasing every detail, every design choice, every consideration for accessibility and community use. Michael listened intently, asking smart questions, pointing out aspects she hadn't even realized were brilliant. "You're going to need to hire a team," he commented. "Engineers, designers, project manager." "I know," Emily admitted, "and that terrifies me. I don't know how to manage people." "You manage 30 hyperactive kids every day. Adults are going to be a piece of cake," he smiled. "But seriously, I know. People, I can do introductions if you want." "Introductions, yes. No you covering salaries or being intrusive." "Yes, ma'am," he agreed, but he was smiling. They talked for another hour about everything and nothing, about how San Francisco was strangely similar and different from New York at the same time, about how Lily had tried to teach the names of all her plants to the new neighbor, about how Emily was learning to use architectural design software she had bought with the advance from the bid. "I miss you," Michael said as it was getting late. "It sounds silly to say this after just 5 days, but it's true." "It's not silly," Emily replied softly. "I miss you too. Lily asked 3 times today when you're coming back." "Sunday night. I'll arrive at 10, but I don't want to wake you guys. Can I come by Monday morning?" "Or," Emily said, surprising herself with her own boldness, "you can come straight here when you arrive. I'll leave the key under the mat. You can sleep on the couch if you want, so you're not alone in the empty apartment after a long trip." There was a pause, and Emily saw emotion cross his face. "Are you sure?" "I am. Lily will be over the moon to wake up and see you here, and I want you to be here." "Then I will be," he promised. When they hung up, Emily sat on the couch for a long time, staring at the black screen of her laptop. She was letting him in, really in, not just into her life, but into her home, into her routine, into all the little spaces she had guarded so fiercely. And for the first time it didn't feel scary. It felt right. October brought renewed warmth to New York, and changes Emily never thought possible. The office on the third floor of the EduTech Innovations building had become her creative sanctuary, a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a prime view of Fifth Avenue. She had decorated the walls with hanging plants and corkboards covered in sketches and reference photos. The renovation of the Cultural Center in Brooklyn was underway, and Emily had hired a small team, 2 engineers, a designer, and a project manager with 40 years of experience who treated her with the professional respect she had never received before. It was strange having people reporting to her, waiting for her decisions, trusting her vision. But it was also empowering. She still taught 3 times a week. She couldn't completely abandon the students who greeted her with messy smiles and endless enthusiasm. But now, teaching was a choice, not a desperate necessity, and that made all the difference. Michael maintained his routine of 1 week in San Francisco, 1 week in New York. It was exhausting for him. Emily could see it in the dark circles that grew deeper with each cycle, in how he collapsed on her couch on the first night back. But he never complained. He just showed up every week with the key she had given him, officially no longer under the mat, bringing stories of meetings and new products, and the strangeness of living in 2 places at once. Lily had adapted to the rhythm. 1 week with Michael, 1 week without, had become part of her life, just like Monday meant gym class and Friday. It meant pizza day. She counted the days on the calendar that Michael had made for her, placing colorful stickers on each day he was in New York. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, they had become a family. Not in the traditional way. They still didn't officially live together. Michael still kept his own apartment where he stored clothes and received mail. But he spent more nights at Emily's apartment than not. His phone had pictures of Lily as wallpaper, and he knew by heart which cereal brand she liked, and that she only fell asleep if she heard the story of the dragon and the princess who were best friends. It was on a Thursday night in October when the heat made the apartment stifling even with all the windows open that everything changed again. Emily was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Chicken with vegetables, nothing fancy, while Michael helped Lily with her homework at the table in the living room. She could hear their conversation, his infinite patience explaining math in a way that made sense to a 6-year-old mind. "But why can't 3 + 5 be 9? Lily asked, clearly testing the limits of logic. "Because then the whole number system would collapse and the world would be chaos," Michael replied with absolute seriousness. "Cows would start flying, dogs would speak Russian, and you would have to eat broccoli for breakfast." "Yuck!" Lily shouted, laughing. Okay, it's 8. Emily smiled to herself, turning the chicken in the pan. This was the kind of moment she had given up believing she could have. Simple, domestic, full of laughter and normalcy. Michael's phone rang, and she heard the immediate change in his tone of voice. "Hello?" "Yes, it's him." A pause. "What? When?" Emily turned, spatula still in hand, and saw Michael get up from the chair, his hand running through his hair, the gesture he always made when he was stressed. Yes, I understand. No, I will go. Which hospital? Okay, thank you for letting me know." When he hung up, his face was pale. "What happened?" Emily asked, turning off the stove and moving closer. "My dad. He had a massive heart attack. He's in the ICU at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles." Michael looked at her, his eyes filled with conflicting emotions. "They don't know if he will survive." Emily felt her heart tighten. No matter how much the Almeida family had tried to destroy her, no matter how objectively horrible Michael's father was, he was still his father. "You need to go." "I don't know if I want to," he admitted, his voice raw. "He tried to destroy me. Tried to destroy you. Used a child as a pawn." "Why should I?" "Because you will regret it if you don't go," Emily gently interrupted, taking his hands. "Not for him. For you. Because you're not like him, Michael. You don't abandon people even when they deserve to be abandoned. Lily had been very quiet at the table, watching the adults with wide eyes. Uncle Michael, is your dad sick? Michael looked at the girl, then at Emily, and something broke in his carefully controlled expression. He is, sweetheart. Very sick. Then you have to go, Lily said with the simple wisdom of children. When I'm sick, I want Mommy with me, even when I'm mad at her. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. Her daughter had grown up when she wasn't paying attention. She had become this compassionate and wise person who saw the world with disconcerting clarity. I'll book a flight, Michael said, already grabbing his phone. There's one at 11 o'clock. I can make it if I leave now. I'm going with you, Emily said suddenly. He stopped, looking at her in surprise. Emily, you don't have to. I know I don't have to, but you shouldn't do this alone. She looked at Lily. Sweetheart, can you spend a night at Aunt Sarah's house? It will be an adventure, and she said she wanted to make cookies with you. Lily considered this for a moment. Can I bring my stuffed elephant? You can bring your elephant. Then okay. But will you come back tomorrow? We will come back, Emily promised, although she wasn't sure if it was true. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Sarah immediately agreed to take care of Lily, showing up in 20 minutes to pick her up with a backpack full of activities. Emily threw clothes into a bag, called the project manager explaining that she needed 2 days, and before she could fully process what she was doing, she was in the car with Michael heading to the airport. The flight to Los Angeles was silent. Michael held her hand too tightly, looking out the window at the lights of New York disappearing below them. Emily didn't try to make conversation. She just stayed there, solid and present, letting him process. When they arrived at the hospital at 2 in the morning, Michael's family was in the waiting room of the ICU. Emily recognized his mother from the photos, an elegant woman in her 50s, with perfectly styled blonde hair even at that hour, wearing clothes that cost more than Emily's monthly rent. There was an older man who must have been his brother, and a few other people she didn't recognize. They all turned when Michael entered, and then all eyes fixed on Emily. Michael, his mother stood up, her eyes red, but her posture perfect. You came. How is he? Michael asked bluntly. Stable for now, but the doctor said the next 48 hours are critical. She looked at Emily with concern. Illegible expression. And you brought her. She has a name, Michael said, his voice harsh. And yes, I brought Emily, because she is important to me. Important enough to show up at the worst moment for our family. The older brother spoke, standing up. He was tall and broad, with the same strong jaw as Michael, but with crueler eyes. Do you have any idea how this looks? He is dying, and you bring the woman who caused all this. Watch what you say, David, Michael warned, stepping forward. Or what? David challenged. Are you going to hit me? Are you going to cut me off? 2. You've already cut everyone from the family. What more can you do? Enough, their mother interrupted, her voice tired. This is not the time for this. Your father is fighting for his life in the next room. Michael took a deep breath, clearly trying to control his anger. I want to see him. The doctors said immediate family only. 1 at a time, their mother said, and then, surprisingly, looked at Emily. There's a cafeteria on the 3rd floor. It should be open. It was a clear dismissal. Emily could feel the hostility radiating from everyone in that room. But she didn't care. She hadn't come for them. I'll be there, she said to Michael. Take as long as you need. He nodded, and she saw gratitude in his eyes before he turned and followed a nurse toward the ICU. The hospital cafeteria was like all hospital cafeterias, harsh fluorescent lighting, the smell of burnt coffee and disinfectant, plastic tables with uncomfortable chairs. Emily grabbed a coffee that was more hot water with coffee color than actual coffee and sat at a table in the corner. She didn't know how much. Time had passed. It could have been 20 minutes or 2 hours when someone sat down across from her. Michael's mother. "May I?" she asked, though she was already seated. "It's a public table," Emily replied, keeping her voice neutral. They sat in silence for a moment. The older woman studied Emily with eyes that must have evaluated and dismissed thousands of people throughout her life. "You must hate me," she finally said. "Actually, no," Emily replied honestly. "Hate requires more energy than I have to spend on you." A smile touched the woman's lips. "You're straightforward. Michael said you were." "When did you talk to him about me?" "I didn't. I heard him talking to a friend on the phone months ago before the breakup." She took a sip of her own coffee, grimacing at the taste. "He said you were the most honest woman he had ever met, that you didn't pretend to be someone you weren't, even when it cost you. And yet you tried to destroy me." "Yes," the admission came without preamble, "because you were a threat to the plans we had for him. And in my family, plans are more important than people." "What a sad life," Emily said, and there was no judgment in her voice, just factual observation. Michael's mother looked at her with something that could be surprise. "Aren't you going to yell at me, accuse me?" "What good would that do?" Emily asked. "You did what you did. I can't change that. I can only choose how to move forward." "And how did you choose to move forward?" "By being happy," Emily replied simply. "Building a good life with my daughter, letting Michael be a part of that life if he wants to, creating beautiful things in the world instead of destroying." The older woman fell silent, her fingers drumming on the coffee cup. "My husband is dying," she finally said, and for the first time there was real emotion in her voice. 34 years of marriage, and he is dying. And do you know what I realized sitting in that waiting room? That I don't know if I love him. I'm not sure if I ever did. Our marriage was an arrangement, convenient, strategic, but love, real love, I don't know. Emily didn't know what to say to that, so she remained silent. "Do you love my son?" The question came abruptly, directly. "Yes," Emily answered without hesitation. "I love him. Even knowing that our family will always be a problem, even knowing that there will always be people judging you, saying you're with him for the money." "People are always going to talk," Emily said. "They will always judge. I can live my life trying to satisfy other people's opinions, or I can live my life being honest with what I feel. I choose the latter." Michael's mother studied her for a long moment. "I can see why he likes you," she finally said. "You have backbone, courage, things that the women in our circle often lose along the way if they ever had them. Thank you, I guess." "That was a compliment." The older woman stood up. "Take care of him. Michael has always been the most sensitive of my children, the only one who really felt things. I always thought it was a weakness, but maybe it's his greatest strength." "It is," Emily agreed. "It definitely is." Michael's mother nodded once, then left the cafeteria without looking back. Michael appeared half an hour later, his eyes red but dry. "How is he?" Emily asked, getting up immediately. "Alive, weak, but alive." Michael sank into the chair next to her. He was conscious for a few minutes, and he apologized." "He apologized?" "Yes. He said he spent his whole life making bad choices, putting business before family. Michael said he didn't blame me for cutting contact. He ran his hand over his face, exhausted. And then he asked if I could someday forgive him." "And can you?" Michael fell silent for a long moment. "I don't know. Maybe. Eventually. But not today. Today I I just want to go home, to New York, to you and Lily, to our messy and imperfect but real life. He took her hand. Thank you for coming with me. You didn't have to, but it means everything that you did. I know I didn't have to, Emily said, intertwining her fingers with his. But families show up for each other, and we are family, Michael. You, me, and Lily, in all the ways that matter. Tears finally fell from his eyes, and Emily pulled him into a hug right there in the awful hospital cafeteria, letting him cry against her shoulder while fluorescent lights flickered above and the smell of disinfectant filled the air. They returned to New York on the first flight of the morning. Michael's father would survive. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. The family had promised to leave Michael alone, at least for now. It wasn't a fairy tale happy ending, but it was resolution. The kind of resolution that real people achieve when life is complicated and families are messy. When they got back to the apartment at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, Sarah was already there with Lily, who jumped into Emily's arms with a force that almost knocked them over. I missed you, Lily declared, but Aunt Sarah and I made star-shaped cookies and only burned 2. Only 2 is a record, Emily said, covering her daughter's face with kisses. Were you good? I was an angel, Lily said virtuously, and Sarah rolled her eyes behind her, telling a different story, but Emily didn't mind. After Sarah left with a promise of lunch next week, the 3 were alone in the apartment. Lily insisted on showing every drawing she had made, every story she had invented over the 2 days. Michael listened to everything with the attention that only someone who truly cared could give. And then, when Lily finally fell asleep for her afternoon nap, exhausted from 48 hours of concentrated energy, Emily and Michael found themselves alone in the living room. So, she began, that was intense. Sorry for dragging you into my family drama. You didn't drag me. I chose to go. She sat beside him on the couch. And I would do it again, because that's what we do, Michael. We show up for each other. He pulled her closer, and she sank against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I love you, he said suddenly. I know I never said it directly, but I love you, Emily. You and Lily. You are my real family, the only one that truly matters. Emily felt something immense and terrifying and wonderful expand in her chest. I love you too, she replied, the words coming out easier than she had imagined they would. Even when you're too annoying and too organized and insist on buying things I didn't ask for, he laughed, the sound vibrating through his chest to her. Even when you're too stubborn and refuse to ask for help and leave colored pencils scattered all over the apartment. Even so, they stayed like that for a long time, intertwined. On the couch, the golden afternoon light streaming through the windows. From the bedroom came the soft sound of Lily's breathing as she slept, and outside the city continued its relentless pace. But there, in that small and cramped apartment that had seen so much struggle and so much joy, Emily finally allowed herself to believe in something that had seemed impossible months ago. Happy endings didn't come perfect and wrapped with a bow. They came messy and complicated, with good days and bad days, with problematic families and bills still needing to be paid. They came in the form of a man who flew half the time but always returned, in the form of a daughter who taught adults about compassion, in the form of architectural plans scattered across the table and plants stubbornly growing in yogurt cups. They came in the form of imperfect but real love, built brick by brick through daily choices to show up, to trust, to try. And that kind of happy ending, the one built with dirty hands and an open heart, was the best kind of all. November arrived, bringing spring rains that washed New York with the scent of wet earth and ozone. The renovation of the cultural centre was 60% complete, and Emily had started receiving contacts for other projects. Small ones initially, a house here, a store there, but it was a start. Michael had finally found balance in his travel routine. The company was thriving with new investors, and he had hired an excellent vice president who managed San Francisco while he was in New York. And Lily was growing up too fast, transforming from that little kid into a young person with strong opinions about everything, from global warming to which paint color was best for drawing dragons. It was on an ordinary Tuesday, nothing special, that Michael showed up at Emily's office in the middle of the afternoon. She was bent over plans when he knocked on the already open door. "Hi," he said. "Can I interrupt?" "Always," she replied, pushing her reading glasses up onto her head. "What's up?" He stepped in, closing the door behind him, and suddenly he seemed nervous in a way Emily had never seen before. "I have a question to ask you." "Okay? And you can say no. I want you to know you can say no, and it will be okay, and nothing will change between us if—" "You said no!" He was speaking too fast, the words tripping over each other. "Michael, you're scaring me. What?" He knelt down. The world stopped. From the bag he was carrying, Michael pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, Emily saw the simplest and most perfect ring she had ever seen, a thin band of gold with a single, small, delicate, and understated diamond. "Emily Johnson," he began, his voice trembling but firm. "You taught me what it really means to live, not just to exist or build a career or accumulate achievements, but to truly live, with an open heart and fierce courage and brutal honesty. You gave me a family when I didn't know I needed one. You showed me that strength doesn't come from money or power, but from showing up every day and doing the hard work of being a whole human being." Tears were already falling down Emily's face. "And Lily taught me that love isn't just romance. It's making crooked braids and listening to dragon stories for the 100th time and showing up at the school presentation even when exhausted from jet lag. It's choosing every day to be part of something bigger than yourself." He took a deep breath. "So, I'm asking you, knowing that our life will continue to be complicated and messy and imperfect, knowing that we will fight and disagree and make mistakes, will you marry me? Will you build a real life with me? Not because I can save you, or because you need me, but because we are better together than apart." Emily couldn't speak. Her throat was tight with emotion, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Michael, if you're not ready, I'll wait," he said quickly. "If you never want to marry, we won't. I wanted you to know that I'm ready for anything you want, in any form that works for you." And there, in that office overlooking Fifth Avenue, surrounded by her sketches and plants and the smell of cold coffee in the forgotten mug, Emily Johnson had her answer. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." The smile that lit up Michael's face could have fed all of New York City. He slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands and then pulled her in for a kiss that contained all the promises words could not express. When they finally pulled apart, both laughing and crying at the same time, Emily looked at the ring on her finger. "It's perfect," she said. "How did you know the size?" "Lily measured your finger while you were sleeping," he admitted. "With that cheap ring you wear sometimes, she's my official accomplice in this operation." "Did she know?" Emily asked, between laughter and tears. "She insisted on helping choose the ring. She said it had to be simple but special, like Mommy." Michael smiled. "She also has a question for you." "What?" "She wants to know if when we get married she can call me Dad. Not Uncle Michael, just Dad." And that was what finally broke Emily completely. She collapsed into his chest, years of fear and pain and hope mixing into tears that wouldn't stop. "Is that a yes?" Michael asked gently. "It's a yes for everything," she managed to say. "For marrying, for you to be her dad, for this crazy life we're building. Yes, for everything." They stayed like that for a long time, embraced in the office while New York continued its frantic pace outside. And for the first time in her adult life, Emily Johnson didn't feel afraid of the future, because the future wasn't something scary to be avoided or survived. It was something to be built, brick by brick, day by day, with the people you loved by your side. The forbidden reason Michael fell in love with her was never her vulnerability to be fixed or her poverty to be saved. It was her imperfect strength, her brutal honesty, her courage to show up every day and do the hard work of truly living. And Emily, in turn, hadn't fallen in love with money or security or an easy solution to her problems. She had fallen in love with the man who saw her, really saw her, and still chose to stay. Not because she needed to be saved, but because together they were building something neither of them could build alone. It wasn't a fairy tale, it was better, it was real.